We finally got to see this new Chiefs offense in action on Saturday night, although it was very brief. Have a lot to talk about from this first game. Obviously, came with some injury news of Hollywood Brown that went down on his first reception of the season, so tough there, but obviously plenty more to get into, and very brief again with the starters, at least on the offensive side of the ball. So, Chiefs Kingdom, welcome back to the podcast. Ready to get into it, excited to talk about some actual football being played rather than draft news, free agency news, camp news. There was some real football play. Exciting to see, and the Chiefs do lose 26-13 on Saturday night in Jacksonville. Obviously, it's preseason, doesn't matter. At this point, does the regular season even matter to the Chiefs? I think last year, a lot of people would say probably not. I've heard that comment float around quite a bit in the offseason, as I'm sure the rest of you have as well. But either way, football to talk about is exciting. And I was live over on Twitch during the first half of that game, and I will be at the next preseason game, so I'm not sure. I might try to do something to maybe go live out at the stadium if I can over there on Twitch. So I will drop that in the description below if you want to check me over out on Twitch. Also doing streaming video game content over there as well. So got plenty of stuff. And actually, just to kind of talk about the channel for a minute, probably going to draw back a little bit at least from the Mizzou Dynasty and the Road to the Show, just a little bit with football games being played. I'm recording this on Sunday night, the day after the game, and the film is already out. So excited for that, and expect more content, film breakdowns, but film breakdown related content, I think is what I'm trying to say. That'll be available though soon. I've got the FAU film review and breakdown coming probably tomorrow. And either way, excited. Excited about football. So just getting right into this, I think let's just go ahead and start with the bad news, right? Hollywood Brown out. And I'm just going to read off exactly what Andy Reid said. As far as injuries go, this is from the post-game press conference, of course. Hollywood Brown has that same thing Tyreek Hill had down here, actually. Sternoclavicular post-dislocation. I think he'll miss some time. We'll just see where he's at. So already, we remember that Tyreek Hill injury back in 2019, and that kept him out, I want to say, for 6 weeks is what they said. So likely going to be missing Hollywood Brown for week 1. And from what I've heard, or what I've read and heard, I guess, is that it's likely that Rashee Rice is not going to get suspended this year. I'm still iffy and weary on that, and I've mentioned a couple of times on the podcast just the Willie Gay situation that happened a couple of years ago where he got suspended. I think it was like 4 or 5 weeks into the season, so holding my breath on that one, but at least hopefully the two won't overlap if anything like that does happen. Xavier Worthy didn't do anything in the box score, but he did a lot for the offense, and I will get to that on the film breakdown. Because already just looking at the film, Xavier Worthy, I think, is going to have a great impact on this offense right out of the gate. The Jags were concerned with his speed. Just looking at the film, and I'd heard this talked about already on the Locked On Chiefs podcast last night, or Saturday night right after the game. And they or maybe it was on the RGR, but either way, they talked about it, and obviously didn't show the film or anything, but the film's already out. I'm excited to get back to watching film, of recent games instead of going back to last season and watching the same film I've seen over and over and over. It's nice to get some new games, obviously, to look at on that side. But what Xavier Worthy did to the Jags defense, is absolutely what you wanted to see, and I think adds a different dynamic to this Chiefs offense, and absolutely will. And if Rashee Rice is still in there, you still have all those other role players. You still have a lot of guys, even if, because Xavier Worthy is going to be, hopefully, I guess I'll say, what McCole Hardman was brought back to be, essentially. You didn't have that guy that was going to stretch the field. And I think MVS was kind of expected to be that guy, but it never materialized. And I don't think that any defense is worried enough about McCole Hardman for him to do that. And until Xavier Worthy proves otherwise with the speed that he does have, I think that opens up big time for the Chiefs offense to maneuver, because even just, I think it was the first play of the second drive, Carson Wentz's first completion to Noah Gray absolutely opened him up by clearing out the middle of the field. And I mean, you had a safety that was 30 yards off of the line of scrimmage. It was kind of wild. So it's exciting to see, because it just goes to show, and to see that on film week 1 in the preseason, I'm sure Andy and Matt Nagy and those guys on the offensive side are really going to draw some things up to really, help push the ball down the field and become more of a vertical offense once again. So I mentioned MVS, and I had to get into this on the podcast because it was a clip of the podcast last week that I had put out that invoked quite a bit of responses, which I misread a tweet or saw a incorrect tweet that MVS had been cut by the Bills. This turned out to be false, but I did say that on the podcast last week. I posted this clip of the podcast where I talked about it. Followed up about Gabe Davis, who's a receiver in Buffalo, because honestly, off the top of my head, I could not think of a single receiver in Buffalo at the time. And it's funny that Gabe Davis went to the Jags, because at the end of the day, that's all the Bills have. They got a bunch of Jags at receiver. And that showed in week 1 of the preseason, which, it's week 1 of the preseason. So I'm not taking a whole lot off of that, but I think it showed. MVS, 1 target and a drop. That's all he got. He's projected to be cut by the Bills. And I'm actually going to bring up his contract, because even when I talked about his contract, I think I was incorrect about that. I think they actually gave him more than what I thought they did in the first place. So I think they would be out. No, it was about the same. Same with what I said. So they would still be void for next year. So they just signed him to the 1 year, about $1.1 million. 1.3 on the cap, so not as bad as I thought. So I did actually think that it was $4 to $5 million from something else I saw, but then again, obviously, don't believe everything you read, right? I think I just took that tweet and ran with it, and I probably misread it, honestly. I mean, if we're being completely honest, I probably just misread the tweet, thinking that MVS had been cut, because I remember texting Ray about it, saying that I saw that he was already cut before we even got to games. But either way, it was a funny interaction. Tons of Bills fans kind of commented, and they really drove the numbers up on that reel/short. I think TikTok, it really kind of went crazy on, which, hey, man, that helps numbers. Anyways, continuing on with the Chiefs and kind of the risers, right? The guys that had their stock rise on Saturday night. A few guys. Carson Steele was big. Carson Steele showed that he really has something to him. I think that he kind of might have just earned a spot on this roster, because Deneric Prince didn't do much, and they used him behind Clyde. So Clyde obviously got the snaps on the second drive, and then it was Deneric Prince after that. And Deneric Prince ended up with 4 carries, 16 yards. Carson Steele, 4 carries, 29 yards, and the touchdown. 7.2 yards per carry. Had a 20-yard run at one point in the game. Carson Steele looked like the real deal. I was kind of surprised. And he's kind of looked at as a fullback, but he is a running back. And I think that he could absolutely earn a spot. I mean, he kind of almost reminds you of Pacheco running the ball in a way. I mean, he was fast enough. He ran angry, and he put up some numbers. I thought his stock definitely rose a ton in this game Saturday night. On to Nico Remigio. His stock, I think, is also still staying kind of. I feel like there was one play on special teams where I want to say it was a fumble. I think he was the one that fumbled or muffed a kickoff. I can't remember off the top of my head, but 3 catches, 35 yards. And he also ran the ball one time for 3 yards, which it was on 5 targets. I think he's a lock to make this roster. He's going to be one of the kick returners. And I think Nico Remigio this year is definitely going to get a roster spot. Obviously, he had a buzz in camp last year, got hurt, didn't make the team, and now coming back to this year, he's had a ton of buzz. Seems like the only receiver, other than Worthy, I feel like I've really heard talked about out of camp this year, and is really, he showed up Saturday night, so look for another couple of good performances from him, or something solid to kind of build on. And then that leads me to the defense and Jaden Hicks. Jaden Hicks, 3 big tackles, and once the twos got on the field in the second, third drives, Jaden Hicks looked absolutely phenomenal. It seemed like he was just everywhere, all over the field at one time. It seemed like every play I saw Jaden Hicks being involved in on a tackle or, whatever it was. But Jaden Hicks, the way he moved around, I'm excited to watch the film on him and just see, from the All-22 camera exactly what, that looked like, because watching it live on the broadcast camera, he looked like a solid safety, to say the least. So I think he's just got to get that speed up to the next level. Obviously, you go through the preseason and, the levels of speed are going to be gaining, but once you get to week 1 and, once you start to get into, I think that's really when he's going to cut his teeth, per se, in the NFL, to really, show up and be a solid safety and really be able to work him into this defense. So I think the Chiefs absolutely, it looks like from game 1, they absolutely hit on this draft pick this year. So, and I know that some people question them drafting a safety, but, at this point, the way that the draft has panned out, I think when it comes to defense, at least, defense and offensive line almost, you can't question Veach. Because there's a couple other guys that I'm going to get to in that fits that same parameter. Obviously, the running back, Clyde, hadn't panned out, I should say. Rashee Rice, is what it is. Xavier Worthy, we'll see. Sky Moore, that was rough. He's still deep down on the depth chart, I think, too. We'll see. Tight ends? Yeah, I think solid, because we'll see with Jared Wiley. Because I do actually kind of like what we saw out of Jared Wiley. But when it comes to defense and offensive line, can you question the man Veach? And even running backs, you had the blunder with Clyde. You follow that up with a 7th-round pick of Isaiah Pacheco. Not too bad. So, and then offensive line, I guess recently you could say Veach hasn't hit as much on the offensive line. But I think this left tackle, Kingsley Suamataia, let me tell you, I think he is going to be solid. He looked really good out there Saturday night. He only played the one drive, of course. So we do have a very limited sample size on what we saw out of Kingsley Suamataia besides training camp, obviously. But I do think that that's going to be a hit. I think that draft pick is going to be a hit. On the defensive side, Jaden Hicks looks great. And FAU had a very sneakily good game. Only 3 tackles, but he really looked good on a couple of really good pass rushes. They had him out in coverage at one point. I'm excited to get on the film with him just because I don't think that I'm going to wait to watch the defensive film to add to the video. I think I'm just going to go off of last year's film, kind of what I've been working on for FAU. That'll kind of be my final off-season player, breakdowns. But obviously something we're going to really look at on film this week. And I kind of plan on, you'll see. I plan on putting out a video just on that first drive for the offense alone and just kind of go through and break that down. But I think that's it on the guys that I really stood out to me. Obviously going in, I had mentioned that a couple of times the left tackle is going to be a big spot that I'm really going to look out for. Mike Caliendo was the one that filled in for Joe Tooney at left guard, and you wonder if maybe that would have been Wanye Morris's spot if he wouldn't have got hurt. Caliendo then moved over to center once the ones came out of the game. So I think he's probably obviously got a spot, although he is the one that had that high snap. That ended up being a fumble, went off Carson Wentz's hands. I think he ended up recovering the ball, if I'm not mistaken. But he did have the high snap, so we'll see where the Chiefs kind of go at with center next week when the twos come out. And that one from the crowd, preseason from the crowd, I feel like is a little bit harder to really obviously hammer down who's who out there. So definitely once I go back to rewatch that and watch the film, we'll get there when we get there. But yeah, man, excited. I will have to say I'm excited. I would love to get your opinions as well and what you guys think about what the Chiefs are going to do this season or how they're going to fare and what you thought about week one. Just kind of looking at what they had to put out there. Obviously, the new kickoff rule is going to be wild. We saw Reese Zamet kick off at one point. He also got a catch and a couple of runs, which his game is going to, it's going to look like he's going to come along and maybe a special teams player. I want to touch on Jared Wiley before I wrap this podcast up. Jared Wiley, and we'll get to the other guy in a second. But Jared Wiley so far, they put him in a very Kelsey-esque role. And I feel like I haven't seen that out of any of the other tight ends. There was one motion play in general. I guess Noah Gray kind of sometimes they throw out there in that. But you see Kelsey a lot of times come out as the wide, the all the way at the edge wide receiver. And come in motion underneath the slot guy. And they did that with Wiley, I noticed, on one play. And there may have been more plays where, they pulled that motion out. But I just thought that was interesting that he is very clearly going to be, I think, groomed for that role to kind of succeed Kelsey. At least from what I saw Saturday night. I mean, this is very, obviously we're going off of one preseason game. So, I mean, I could be dead wrong about this. But just from the positions they were putting him in, I thought it was interesting to see it just mirrored Kelsey's game, I think. And so, that's terrific, too. If Kelsey is going to work with the Wiley and help him become that guy, because obviously Gonzalez had already been gone a few years. So Kelsey kind of cut his teeth on his own in the NFL. He didn't really have a legendary tight end to look up to. It wasn't like Gonzalez was still in Kansas City. I think at one point we thought Tony Moeaki was going to be that guy after, I can't remember what team he played, but he had that crazy game and he dunked. Had that crazy one-handed catch in the back of the end zone, and then ended up being Kelsey, I think, the next year. Okay, man, off of the leg injury that he had, where he missed that first season. But anyways, Wiley, I do think, is going to be kind of put into that role, I would assume, after seeing the way they treated him in the first game. Now to my final talking point, I think, Justin Ross. He has been the camp darling, it seems like, for the last 2 years. A lot of talk. Obviously, he was hurt the first year. We knew he wasn't going to play. Last year, we really expected maybe him to pick up some slack. And I think, he was part of that depth of that receiving core that I think the Chiefs really kind of wanted him to elevate. I think maybe a plan to have him and Rashee Rice kind of elevate their game and become a tandem to help out, likes of MVS, and obviously looking for more out of Sky Moore than they got. I think Sky Moore is kind of figured out where he's at, right? And I feel like I'm missing someone in there. Obviously, Kadarius Toney didn't pan out the way they wanted him to pan out last year. Anyways, I think Justin Ross was primed to come in and help out last year. This year is a different story because I feel like there's a lot more depth on this receiving core. I mean, Hollywood Brown, depending on the time he'll miss, could open up a lot more opportunities. We obviously didn't see Kadarius Toney out there. We saw Sky Moore very late in the game. So, I mean, when you do kind of hammer out that depth chart there, I mean, you're looking at Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, then who? Justin Watson's still hurt at the moment. He didn't play out there either. So, I mean, that leaves room for maybe a guy like Justin Ross if he steps up. Because, I mean, he had one hell of a catch on Saturday night. It was absolutely amazing catch. 23-yard. He had 1 target, 1 catch. It was 23 yards, as I said. Went up and got it and just straight took it from the defender. I mean, that's exactly what you want to see. And I don't mind Justin Ross still possibly being a threat on this offense. Obviously, the injury concerns are there. But I don't know. We'll see. I think Justin Ross is somewhat of a dark horse to kind of maybe help out this offense this year. And then Rashee Rice had the drop. Now, I did kind of want to touch on that just because he did have that problem last year. You know, Rashee Rice doesn't get as much gripe from anybody because of how he performed down the stretch. And, I mean, he was very obviously the wide receiver 1 for the Chiefs last year. And, I mean, I don't give him too much gripe. Earlier in the year, I was very annoyed because I didn't like the pick originally. I thought that the Chiefs could have done better at picking a wide receiver last year. Worked out. But I think that's something to kind of keep a watch out on, is just watching the drops with Rashee Rice, because you'd like to see that improve. Obviously, we're here in year 2 now. Went all the way to a Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl. You know, you had plenty of time to develop, and I think that you'd really like to see those drops cut out. Just week 1 of the preseason, definitely overreacting right now. Absolutely. This is an overreaction and a stretch, but something to keep an eye on. So that's pretty much it from week 1 for me. Again, let me know in the comments below what you thought about preseason game 1, where you feel like the Chiefs are going this year, if you feel like it's good so far, you feel like it's bad. But I don't think there's too much to really. Obviously, the Hollywood Brown situation, are you worried about that? Would be a pretty good, question. And how worried are you just based off of last year and what they did with the receiving core they had last year? Either way, like I said, in the description below, I've got the Twitch posted, so make sure you go over there, follow, and because I'll be going live throughout the season over on Twitch, as well as, gaming content over there with college football. Madden's getting ready to come out. MLB The Show, I don't think I've actually streamed that yet. I'm very new to the streaming thing, so I'm planning to stream more and more live events and stuff like that. Make sure you smash that subscribe button. Look, we got like 3-4 weeks now until the regular season starts. We got till September 5th. We're trying to hit that 300 before then. We're right around 241, I think, the last time I looked. So we got like about 60 to go. So make sure if you're in here, you're not subscribed, smash that subscribe button. Also smash that like button for me. And hit the bell if you want to stay notified for any future postings. Obviously, the film reviews and breakdowns are coming, and the podcast is going to be every Monday. So keep it locked right here, Papa Schro Knows podcast, Mondays at 3 p.m. Central Time. And until next week, we'll see you. Go Chiefs.